I have created the worst team ever in Football Manager 2024 to see how long it will take them to win one game. And this is what the worst team ever looks like in Football Manager. As far as the actual club details are concerned, they have the worst possible reputation. They have a club attendance of one, so they have one fan because that is the minimum value. Looking at their finances, I've given them a negative £1 billion bank balance, which is, I can't even imagine what that looks like. I have also given them a bunch of outstanding debts and loans. They have a £60 million bank loan that's due in the next year. And then they have a £1 billion bank loan that's due in the next 10 years. So this is the least financially stable club in the whole world. To make matters worse, they are starting off as an amateur club in the English Premier Division. This may automatically be changed to a professional club after season one, since I believe the EPL mandates that it only be made up of professional clubs. But to start off the game, they are of amateur status. Furthermore, they exist within the worst stadium with a capacity of one, a seating capacity of one, a use capacity of one, but the stadium can expand to two, and the stadium is in the worst possible condition it could be in. Additionally, they don't play on grass or turf, but instead they play on gravel. So they're essentially, I'd like to think of this stadium as essentially just a gravel road that they somehow made into a football pitch, and they put one lawn chair next to the road and said, all right, this is a stadium. Their facilities are as bad as they could possibly be in the game, with ones for their training and youth facilities, as well as junior coaching and youth recruitment. So this team doesn't have any good players. They also cannot develop them. And speaking of those players, this team is composed of the worst players possible at every position. From worst player one, who has a one for everything, and if we look at their hidden attributes, it is one. So they are terrible across the board. They have a current ability and a potential ability of one. So this is the worst team ever. And not only are the players the worst possible team ever, but the contract situation is just awful. Each of these players are on £150,000 per week, a deal that goes to 12/31/2028, so at least 5 years. They are stuck with these terrible players and these terrible contract situations. And finally, to compound upon all of that, we have a head coach, an assistant coach, and a coach who are the worst they could possibly be. We have the worst manager, who is the worst at everything he could be, although it looks like I might have missed tactical knowledge and goalkeeper handling, but we'll give him that. Same thing with our worst staff one here, who's the assistant coach, as well as the worst staff here, who is one of our coaches. So this truly, in all aspects of the game, is the worst team that could possibly exist. So the worst team ever is starting off in the English Premier Division. And we can see here that even just alphabetically, they're already in last place. But we are going to start them off in the English Premier Division, and we're going to simulate forward until they win their first game. And we're going to see how long it takes them to win just one game. It could be in the league, it could be in a cup competition, it doesn't, as long as it's not a friendly, as long as it's truly a competitive game, we're just simulating forward until they win once. And I want to note, we did this experiment in Football Manager 2023, where we kept all of these players at the squad. We made sure they never left and that the first team was always composed of the worst players ever. And we simulated forward, and they literally never won a game. They went so far as to go out of all the playable divisions that even with the pregame editor, I had loaded extra divisions, and they just kept losing until they were out of the playable divisions. So in this version of this experiment in FM24, I'm going to give the worst team ever a fighting chance. So they are stuck with this horrible situation and these horrible players, but there's no transfer embargo. These players are free to leave the club, so theoretically they could release them. And there is the opportunity for the worst team ever to get better. We are starting from absolutely nothing. They have the worst training facilities, the worst youth facilities. They have no bank balance. They have the worst players. So truly are starting off as the worst club ever, and they're starting off with nothing. But this means that starting off with nothing, they can only improve. So how long will it take them to be good enough to win their first game? That is the question we are going to ask. And with that in mind, we start in the English Premier Division. If they win a match in the EPL, I will be flabbergasted. But let's start off by moving 1 year into the future and let's see how the worst team ever does after one season. And after one season, the impossible has happened. The worst team ever has actually finished on less points than when they started the season. I think my face might be blocking the point total, so I'm going to bring this up above. But 9 points were deducted from the worst team ever because they went into administration. Yeah, that was probably my fault because in the in-game editor, I essentially made them go into administration. But yeah, they had the worst season ever. 0 wins, 0 draws, 38 losses, 0 goals, 190 goals allowed, a negative 190 goal differential, and negative 9 points. But honestly, they didn't do as bad as I think I was expecting them to do. So maybe they got better throughout the season. But in all things considered, having the worst team ever and only losing 3-0 to Tottenham isn't actually horrible. I was expecting to see like an 18-0 loss, but overall, they weren't as bad as maybe I thought they would be. But with that, let's look at the club details. Are they going to be better in the championship? Let's find out because I'm seeing a new captain and a new head coach, so things must have changed. So looking at the club details, the reputation has gone up massively. That's good, just by being in the English Premier Division. The club attendance, it looks like the game didn't like having a club attendance of 1, so it looks like they just automatically fixed that. Why do they have such a big bank balance? They have gone to professional. They had a negative £1 million bank balance. How do we have 207 million pounds now? Where did this money come from? I don't know how this has happened. Okay, well, I guess the game just gave them a huge financial windfall. You know what? I think when they went into administration, they must have essentially been allowed to start over. And now they're getting parachute payments in general. So the worst club ever actually has money to work with now. They might get better. Their stadium is still terrible. The capacity's 50, and they have no ability to get any better. And it's still a gravel stadium. Their youth facilities are actually down to 0, but they have some improvements there. But I mean, the worst team ever might win next season. They have a huge bank balance now. They must have been able to start over again because of the administration situation. But they have a lots of income and they have a huge bank balance. They should get better. Let's see if their playing squad looks different. And sure enough, that playing squad, they still have all of those worst players, unsurprisingly. But they've brought in, and I'm assuming all of these players came in through their youth intake. But their youth intake is the team that's starting now. So it's not terrible. Current ability of 8. They're bringing in better players. So their starting strikers have a current ability of 8 and 8. So they're still really bad. But they have the money now to improve some of those things. So maybe they'll be all right. Is it enough to win a game in the Sky Bet Championship? I guess let's find out. And looking at season 2, it was not enough for them to win a game. They still lost every game, unsurprisingly. But we've seen improvement. They did score a goal, so that is getting better. Looks like we had 1 goal during the course of the season, so that is better. They did lose in the Caribou Cup first round, so nothing in the cup competitions. They also lost to Spennymoor in the FA Cup third round. Spennymoor Town are in the Vanarama National League North. So we may still have a ways to go before this club is able to win their first game. Yeah, they were pretty bad. They actually got 2 goals, but they allowed 194. 0 wins, 0 draws, 46 losses. They're not even getting a draw. So yeah, the odds of winning I think might be a little low. Are they getting better? The reputation's maybe a little higher, but otherwise about the same. Finances are how much do they 111 million? I don't know how that was compared to last season, but certainly they'll be going down if they keep going down the leagues, but they are still getting those parachute payments. They're going to want to now that they're going down the leagues, they need to use that money to deal with use those parachute payments to improve the squad. They don't have much bank debt left. So I think they're doing okay. The facilities are still terrible, unsurprisingly. But given that they're a professional side, they've got money, they can improve the team. They have Chris Wilder as a head. Chris Wilder is coaching this team. Okay. Chris Wilder. This is the type of team that Chris Wilder could lead to a victory. I'll tell you what, they might do it. And in season three, we might see them win, maybe, or maybe not, considering that they still have a lot of the worst players ever on a huge salary. But let's see, agreed playing time. Their star players are these guys here. Are they any good? Our star player is a current ability of 30. That is much better than a current ability of 7. So the team is slowly improving. We'll see what they do in season 3. And looking at season 3, once again, they did not win a game. Not even close. Do we have any close games in here? Doesn't even look like. We didn't even get a draw. So we have still lost every single match. Wow. Okay. And they're in the EFL trophy now. So I mean they're playing teams that are lower still, but they can't even get a win in any of those. Wow, this is still a terrible team. I guess we're seeing improvement. Last season, 0 wins, 0 draws, 46 losses, but we got 4 goals this season, and we only allowed 155. So the team's getting better. I think their reputation is increasing little by little, so that might help them. They're definitely low on the bank balance now. They need to, I don't know if they still have those same opportunities to do well. They're not getting the parachute payments anymore. It's going to be harder to improve an already bad squad. Looking at the facilities, I guess the youth facilities have improved to 1, so that's good. So yeah, they're still really bad. I'm just wondering if they're starting to miss out on the opportunity to really get better now that they don't have the parachute payments. Which, to be fair, a lot of those parachute payments went to the worst players ever who are still on huge contracts. So that's probably where it's going. But let's look at their star players now. Are they any better? Looking at them, a current ability of 54. Looking at their important players, a current ability of 49. We're starting to maybe get to a point where the worst team ever has brought in enough players that if they get the right roll of the dice, they just need one. They just need one time when FM24 gives them the roll of the dice and the other team is just horrible. They're at a point where they could win a game. And again, this was Sky Bet League 1. We're dropping down to Sky Bet League 2 now. I think it could happen. Could it? Maybe? I'll tell you what, they did get a win in a friendly, so in theory, the worst team ever has won. They could do it, and they got a draw, but looking through their schedule doesn't look great. Oh, they've won! The worst team ever finally got a win! A 2-1 victory over Salford. Oh, it took 5 years, but the worst team ever has done it. They won a match. And not only did they win a match, they also got a draw, a 1-1 draw at home to Solihull Moors. And they won on their gravel pitch in front of one fan on a lawn chair. The crowd goes wild. They've done it. I am curious to see how they improved the squad enough to win one game. And looking at it, sure enough, it's a lot of the players that we saw last year. Oliver Farley, who got better, he developed a bit over the course of the season. Jake Roberts, he got a little bit better. They did just enough to bring in good enough players. Again, this is the same. They got one roll of the dice, and it was enough to win one game. They've done it. The worst team ever has finally won. I am curious to see some of those records. Their highest ever position was last place in the Premier Division. Now they're in the Vanarama National League South. They got 4 points last season. That's their highest point total for a whole season with one league win. And let's see what else we've got. In that time, their largest defeat was only 12-0 away to Liverpool. So, all things considered, I don't think that's too bad. But this is what I think is the most important thing. In total, 164 matches lost in a row, 164 matches without winning, and 46 matches without scoring. Those are truly phenomenal records from the worst team ever. Well, there you have it. That was the worst team ever. It took 4 seasons, but the worst team ever was finally able to win one match. We did allow them to approve in this version of the experiment, and obviously that did help because they were able to win one game. But some really astounding records. I think it was 164 matches without winning a match, essentially over the span of about 4 years. But 4 years and 164 matches later, they finally won one. And with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this football manager experiment. This was a really fun one to do. I hope you all are having a wonderful week, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.